Okay, we're going to take a look at how to factorize harder quadratic equations that have basically have a number in front of the x squared that we're going to have to deal with. So when you have a coefficient that's not 1 but it's bigger than 1, then that causes us some extra issues around ability to do this. So one of the ways that we do this is I first set up the idea that this equation is in this form, ax squared plus bx plus c form. So there's a number in front, that's a, there's a number in front of the x, that's b, and then there's c. So this equation is basically in this form. So what we do is we basically this is what I do. I draw an x, and then I put on the top part of the x here. I want to figure out what the product of a and c are. So I take a look at a, which is in this case 3, and I take a look at c, and I take the sign in front and make sure that I do that. So basically I have 3 and then times by a -6, which is 18. So I do that first, -18. And then what I do is I look and see what the middle term is. So the first thing I do, this is like step 1, if you will. This is step 1. And then step 2 is down here, the bottom of the x. And in step 2, what I want to do is see what my middle term is. My middle term is -7. Okay, I just want to state that. So now I have this. I have a product of a and c, which is -18, and I have a middle term which is -7. Now, the sides of the cross, basically what I want to do is figure out what numbers I can use that will add basically to give me this middle term of -7 and a product of -18. So those numbers must give the sum of -7 and product multiplication of -18. Okay, so that's what you've got to work through. So what numbers will give me -18 if I multiply them together? Well, 18 and 1, 3 and 6, 9 and 2, 18 and 1. So those are the things that will multiply together to give me 18. Now they have to add to give me a -7, and they have to multiply to give me a -18. So we play around with these numbers. The only one that's going to give me a sum of 7 is 9 and 2. Right? So now I play around with 9 and 2. So 9 times 2. Now, one of these is going to have to be negative, and it has to give me a -7. So -9 times 2 will give me a -18, and -9 plus 2 will give me my -7. So those are my numbers. My numbers are -9 and 2. Now the next phase of things is to use those numbers to basically what you do is you will rewrite the 3x squared. I was probably going to write this 3x squared. And then we have to break the middle term, -7, into these two numbers that will give us x. So we're going to go -9x plus 2x. So what we've done is we've broken up that middle term into those two numbers that we did with the x, -6. So we don't do anything to the first term. We break up the middle term into those two numbers that will add to give -7, multiply to give -18, and then the -6. Now what we do is we just basically regroup this. And we basically take, if you will, this part and basically factor it out so that we can get an expression. So basically if we take out a 3x out of that, we're going to get left with an x minus 3. That's not a very good x. So what we've done is just taken this and we factored out a common factor, which is a 3x, and we're left with x minus 3. And then plus, and we do the same thing with this other couple pairs of terms, and we can factor out a 2, and we're left with an x minus 3. Now you can see that there's a common factor, x minus 3, and then there's 3x plus 2. So then the final answer, 3x plus 2 is one of the factors, times, because it's timesing now, the common factor of x minus 3. That's how you factor out a very difficult equation if you're not going to use guess and check, using sort of like a cross method, if you will, and breaking up the middle term in this way.